عليكم ورحمة الله. بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. My dear brothers and sisters, yesterday we mentioned the four main sources of tashri', where most of the rules of practice was extracted from those, which the main one is the Quran and then the Sunnah, which not different from Quran. It came to explain the Quran as Quran itself stated, لِتُبَيِّنَ لِلنَّاسِ مَا نُزِّلَ إِلَيْهِمْ, to explain to people what was revealed to them. And then ijma' and then qiyas. All of us, we know the purpose of Sunnah. But we might question, what's the purpose of ijma'? And ijma', is it something independent from Quran and Sunnah? Not at all. لابد للإجماع من سند. Ijma' is depend on text from Quran and Sunnah, but giving you the clear interpretation to that text, if that text could interpret it differently. So ijma' actually, it's fixing our thought and not really, it might be deviated from the right understanding. So there is a great need for the ijma'. Because how you understand the Quran and the Sunnah? You understand the Quran and Sunnah in the light of understanding of the Salaf. You cannot come to give your own interpretation for Quran or Sunnah. By the way, most of groups and jama'at and ahzab, they come to you with evidence from Quran and Sunnah. When they come to you, say, look at the Quran, what they said. Look at the Sunnah, what they said. They are not coming, from their own. But that, their understanding of Quran and Sunnah, not the acceptable understanding. All groups, they have their own evidence. And they think they are doing something right. Why is that? Because when the moment they're not considering the understanding of the Salaf of the Ummah, that's a moment where you shift away from the main source. And as we gave example yesterday, there are some verses and some a hadith could be interpreted differently. And what's make it that way, not the other way? The ijma' of the ummah. If the ummah agreed, when I say ummah, they mean the qualified scholars. That's their opinion, it's matter. The qualified scholars, if they agreed in one era on one matter, that became a law. That became source for us. Basically because they will never agree on something that is dalala or something wrong. It was mentioned in many ayat, if the way was the way of the believers, then you should follow. وَيَتَّبِعْ غَيْرَ سَبِيلِ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. So there is a sabil al-mu'minin. It was mentioned multiple hadith that the ummah will never be gathered on something that's not right. So if the qualified scholars in one era that could agree on something, that has the weight of the law, and that's what we call it ijma'. There are different types of ijma'. No doubt, ijma' at the first era, when the time of Sayyidina Abu Bakr and Umar, and the beginning of the era of Sayyidina Uthman, that's something that visible. Why is that? Because of the scholars amongst Sahaba, they were in one locality. So their opinion is easy to find. Sayyidina Uthman gave permission to Sahaba to live outside Medina. The qualified scholars at the time, Sayyidina Umar, he never gave them permission to stay outside Medina. They would go for trade, for business, for jihad, and then they come back to Medina. He needs them to be there around as Ahlul Shura. And that's why the opinion even of the scholar or Khalifa at that time, if was known with no objection of that, then there is something called Ijma'un Sukuti. That their silence, it's a sign of their agreement, so that means all agree on that matter. Because if any of them that sees something that wrong, they are knowing of their standing for truth, so he will stand up and he will say, I'm against that, this something has to be changed. One time Sayyidina Umar, he wanted to make a law where should not be exceeding a certain amount for the dowry, for mahar, because people start exaggerating. A lady stood up and she said, Allah said in the Quran, وَإِنْ آتَيْتُمْ إِحْدَهُنَّ قِنْطَارًا فَلَا تَأْخُذُوا مِنْهُ شَيْئًا. If you're giving one of them qintar, which is a huge amount of money, do not take any of that, any things away from that. You should give her her right completely without deducting anything from that. So when she said that and recited the ayah, Sayyidina Umar immediately said, you are right and I'm wrong. أصابت المرأة وأخطأ Umar. That lady was right and Umar was wrong. So that a lady from the masses stood up and she speak out of her truth, and that even made him change his mind. And now think of the Sahaba, the qualified scholar of Sahaba, with their standing for haqq. If Sayyidina Umar, for example, or if the others, they make a law or regulation that's something they will disagree with it, they will stand up for it. So there are types of ijma' that can be understood at the time of the first era of Sahaba, and maybe even after that. There's ijma' called Ijma'u Ahl al-Madinah, the agreement of the scholars in Medina, that Imam Malik considered. Imam Malik came to him, they asked him, what's your evidence that the muaddin, they will make tarjih? Let me explain what's tarjih. And in Malikiyah, the muaddin, after he will say Allahu Akbar, he will say something not that loud, with the way just he will raise his voice, he can hear himself, and the one near to him with the shahada before he will announce publicly the shahada. So he said Allahu Akbar out loud, and then he will say Ashhadu an la ilaha, Ashhadu an la ilaha, Ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah, Ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah. And then he will call for that Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah out loud. So that's called tarjih. They said to him, where's your evidence? He said, that being announced and declared 5 times a day, and among the tabi'een, where they are the sons of Sahaba, and no rejection of that for me a stronger evidence than you will say one statement that person said and narrate this hadith. And by the way, we found hadith for that. There's a hadith for that. But the point here that his argument that's stronger than the hadith, that the ijma', the agreement of the qualified scholars at that time, for him it has a strength of something that I should consider according to him. Nowadays, what's replacing ijma', which not that easy to consider, there is ijma'. That's not that something easy. It could be, but not that easy. There are some masail you couldn't find a qualified scholar disagree to that. There are some masail, we'll look at it, some new matters, it's impossible to find disagreement. So you can consider that ijma', on those masail. But there is something replaced the ijma' nowadays called majami'. Majami' Islamiyah. Islamic assembly of a certain scholar, qualified scholar, they gather and the matter will present it to them, then they come with one qualified, one opinion on that matter. Like for example, there is the European Council, like of scholars. There is AMJA, that's for the North American. So there are qualified scholars, imams, and special people. They study the Sharia. They gather, they present the mas'ala, and sometimes they call other external people. They are having more knowledge in that particular subject, sometimes in finance, sometimes in medicine. So they ask, those questions. When they have a clear idea about that, then they will present their opinion. And after discussion, they come one with a united opinion about that matters. Wallahi, our ummah is khair. Always in khair. When you find, scholars, they are always correcting if any of us going in astray. We're blessed with that. We're blessed with the rule of al-amr bil-ma'ruf wa nahy al-munkar, joining good and forbidding evil. Imagine if that not part of the Sharia. The version of Islam that we are receiving today is not the same version of Islam that was, the Prophet taught his companion. Imagine if the rule that preventing having bid'ah, that where it's fine, something that may be useful, something good, that you bring it and present it and became part of the deen. Those rules and other rules in that category, that's really protecting our deen. Have you seen the Ford car of the version of 1930, for example, the first ones, and compare it with 1931? There's no much difference. But compare it with the one 2030, 100 years after, or 2020, 2010. It's not the same. Completely different car. I'm just giving you an example. That's when, the Sharia never being protected, and people not staying on the right way, the version of Islam that we're having today will be completely different. As many other communities, they didn't care about all of this. So we have very authentic tradition that has very strict rules. Today I mentioned about the importance of ijma' and highlighted about, some of that. That's when we read it and we look at it, we have nothing to say but appreciating the scholars, how they sacrifice their time and effort for the ummah. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless all of them, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant for us the respect that they deserve. Ameen. Jazakumullah khairan.